Hey, so this is Mike. I have an update for TwinSync Studio, some of the new tools I've been working on. So I just wanted to show them off and talk a little bit about it, and then show sort of what the goal with this new design is. So I'm going to open up a model that I've already downloaded. There have been a bunch of fixes, by the way, so maybe you'll notice small things that work better. I automatically opened the last widget I was in. Previously we just had here the visual scripting window, which actually we're going to be using this time. But there's some new ones. So we have this geometry analyzer, and what it basically lets us do is, you may have already noticed this one if you download the latest version, there's this thing called the graphical complexity visualization, which is actually not completely accurate yet due to the way iTwin.js rendering works. I can only do on a per element level. I need to be doing on a per part level, just like pieces of an element. So I'm going to be working on that in the future. But for now, it still gives you like a good overview. So you can actually hover over stuff and see how many triangles it's going to produce and what the geometry density is relative to the bounding box, like the cube around this object. So basically how much geometry it's taking up within that amount of space. So we can see these trees are pretty heavy relative to everything else because they're more red than everything else, which is green. And these boxes are pretty light because they're tiny, even though they take up they're over a large space. So the app is totally fine with those. But we can see the high ones here in the geometry analyzer. We can see that there's some with very high vertex density, and we can actually go straight to them and see that they're red. And we can also select them using this menu and just see this information about them. So there will be more features added to this table in the future, but for now we can just use that to look around at all the things in there. And I'm going to add things like the user label so that you don't have to look at these ugly element IDs. But yeah, in general, we can sort of see what's going on here, and that will start to become part of the picture. The other thing that we can do is we can now change the material or basically provide a material as an output when we process our parts. These instances is the sort of more common name for them. They're called parts in iTwin.js. So every time that we export, the app is actually going to run this code that you have here for every single item, basically. So we can tell it to do certain things, such as reassign the material. And that's what I'm going to do today. So today I'm going to sort of show you how you can do some cool stuff here with the scripting, very tiny script, that's just going to say, hey, is this grass in iTwin materials? Let's give it a grass material in Unreal Engine. So the first thing to do is, I believe I actually already did it, but I hit the install button. Yeah, it looks like I have the plugin already in there. And that plugin will be renamed, by the way. But, you got to find your project and install the plugin. So I just did that. I also guess I want to share that I use the architecture empty template in Unreal Engine. So if I just go to Unreal Engine, and I think you actually have to launch it, but it should be pretty quick. You don't actually have to use 5.3, by the way. The new animation works with 5.5, every version of Unreal Engine. Only 5.3 is required for if you're using which very few people use at this point that are using the demo, the level sequence based animation. It's just not as performant as the new animation system, which doesn't require you to set the level sequence. So you can use 5.5 if you want. You don't have to be on an earlier version of Unreal Engine. I'm just waiting for the Epic team to release a new version of Unreal and confirm that they see the issue with Datasmith animation not working in 5.4 and 5.5. But anyway, yeah, so what you want to do is you basically want to go to architecture and then hit blank. And what this is going to do, you're going to create your template. I've already done this. But what this is going to do, whoops, that's not what I wanted. What that's going to do is that's going to give you a nice empty template that already has the plugins that you need, just not my plugin until you install it. Okay, so let's talk about this script here. By the way, you do have to restart Unreal Engine if you've added the plugin while it was running. Okay, so yeah, so this script here. So what we really want to do is, let me get rid of this decoration. Whoops. Okay, there we go. What I really want to do is I want to check the grass objects here. So here, if I select a grass object, you can actually see in the iTwin hierarchy by navigating up that you're going to see first that it has this pretty useless user label here, floor. This is a really old iModel, so it actually doesn't contain as much information as the newer ones. The newer ones have more advanced connectors, so your stuff, whatever you're syncing, will probably have a lot more than this, but in this case I don't have as much to go on. But I do have this user label, and if I navigate up from this one grass element, we'll actually see that there's a like an element in the hierarchy that contains more grass objects, and it's actually called grass 6, which is good for us because we want to grab all of these in our script and just assign them a grass material in Unreal. And then we can see that this other grass also has a similar thing where there's a grass 7 here. So we want to sort of wildcard match all those grasses, which we'll get to. The other thing that I think I wanted to mention but forgot, which is why I opened this, is I have already set up some starter materials. Just wanted to show you how to do that. So if you go to Add Feature Content Pack from the Content Browser Add menu here, you just go to Content and hit Starter Content. And if you have any materials that you've gotten from other plugins or Marketplace Content Fab, then that should probably show up here too, I believe. But anyway, you can hit Add to Project, choose Folder, and I now have the Starter Content folder with these nice materials. You will have to modify the materials to work with the animation. I'll make a link to the video where I talk about how to do that, because I already have a video up for that. But here we're using the new mapping, so let's work with that. Bear with me, there's probably a couple things that might be off on the Windows build of this, I think. But what we want to do, these are currently grouped by, so I want to get the parent base, because like I said, we're going up 1 to get to this parent, so we want the parent in the hierarchy. Like I was saying, okay, I lost my train of thought there, whatever, let's keep going. So we're going to grab the parent of this element that we're processing, and then we're also going to grab its user label. Now I remember what I was going to say, which is just that the menu here, this add node menu here, is currently sorted by type. In the future it's going to be sorted by like topic category. So there'll be like an iTwin menu for accessing iTwin specific things like the parent and the user label for this iTwin specific context. Just so the design is there, so that way if you're ever loading non-iTwin data into TwinSync Studio, which is one of the things that might be on the roadmap, then you would just be accessing like a different category of nodes to inspect its metadata, like if you're interfacing with another format directly. But okay, so I've got my parent and I've got my user label, so that just takes the string out of this element. These are all, well, except for these guys, it's slightly different shade of pink, which I'll probably have to fix. But these guys are what the U64 type. That's just the way the ID is stored for elements. And then we get the parent, which gives us another element ID, and then that gives us the string. So we have our user label, and what we want to do is we want to go from having grass to having an Unreal Engine material path. So that's where these tables come in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create this new table. I'm going to right click in here and hit Select UE Material, which just lets me get a reference to an Unreal Engine material from its path in the file browser. So you find your Unreal Engine project, and you go into the content, and you try to find wherever your material is. So I'm just going to grab this mground grass here. And now we have this path in here, which just is the path that Unreal will recognize. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're just going to type a key for this material, and then we're going to try to match on it in the nodes. So if I go back to the script here, what I want to do is basically replace the default material, which I'm actually going to copy right now because I need it. I'm going to go to string map by table, and I'm going to take this default material that I had and put it in the if not found section, meaning that if we look through this table that we just created and we do not find the key that we're looking for, which the key is actually going to be the user label, then we're going to just give it the default material that was here. So let me set this key to be the user label, because remember our user label was, so our user label in this case is going to be like grass 6 or something. So map by table is going to look for keys, and they're usually an exact match, but I'm going to do match part, meaning that like if the key is part of the user label, then we're going to just take it. So we're going to take that grass value as long as the word grass is in there. And then the other thing I have to do is I actually have to specify the name for my table. So let me rename this to materials. You can have multiple tables, by the way. They all get stored with your like next to your table as JSON. Sorry, next to your BIM file as JSON. Okay, so now I can just type materials. In the future, you'll be able to have like a drop-down menu to be able to correctly select from the tables that you have. And now what we can do finally is return with this found. Whoops, that's not what I want. Type my model back in there. We can now say that the material is the one that we got. So it's basically going to be either we've found a match in this table and we've got our grass, or we could add like a concrete material and try to find some sort of data here that makes sense for that. And then we could we'll map to grass. Otherwise, we're going to get the default material. Okay, so that's perfect. In this case, I'm going to keep this no cluster ID, which basically is the equivalent of what you may, if you used the demo before, the no cluster merging. That's basically what this is. You can also do meta clusters, meta cluster, which is like one big cluster. So that's this guy. That's like merge everything basically. So this is the equivalent of the old merge strategies, if you are familiar with the other part of the demo. So just ways to say which elements get merged inside while you're processing the mesh, just to lower the amount of draw calls by merging stuff. And you can also just pass it like an element ID, so that everything within the element gets merged, or you can even pass the animation ID so it gets merged. Okay, so now that we have all this stuff, whoops, it looks like I disconnected that accidentally. That would have been a problem. I'm just going to hit export, and you'll notice if you've used the demo before that there's only one export button now. If you want to access the scriptless exports, I'm still keeping it here. I'm probably going to rename it to simplified export, but that works for smaller projects. This one is going to work for material mapping and other things. So I'm just going to hit export and go up, and I'm going to call this grass 4. I had some other tests earlier. And then we're just going to wait for that to finish for a second here. And I've already restarted my project, so after installing the plugin. So if you need to do that, you might need to do that. Yeah. Okay, great. Finish exporting. Okay, so let's import this DataSmith file now. All right, so go to that grass 4, hit import here. Let's import and check out our grass. Should already be pre-applied when we import it. Okay, and it looks like it is. So let's just zoom in, and all right, yeah, there we go. So the grass material is applied to all the things that we cared of, or all the things that we expected it to be. All the grass materials that we found. Nothing else we've really done yet, but this is the kind of the way that I envision for this to work. And one of the reasons that that is the case is because it sort of opens the option for other things like this. So let's say that in the future, you'll be able to just like sort of right click on an object and just send it to a table, like add it to a table, and there'll be like a preset here. So you really don't have to use this visual scripting here. It's more for advanced users. But the point is that you can always reach for it. And also if you're, talking to support about how can I get a specific thing done, I don't have to release an update. I can just be like, here is a script, visual script that you can use to do exactly what you want. So two of the things to show. So first off, obviously there is going to be a file menu here where you can save and import these, and you'll just be able to like look at recent ones. But the other more interesting thing is, so let's say that you don't want to match on the user label. Let's say you want to match on something like iTwin has this concept of a code and a code value. So I'm going to grab this JavaScript eval node, and I'm just going to use that for the key instead. I'm actually not going to run this one just because I'm ad-libbing here, but this does actually, it's already fully implemented and I've tested it, this JavaScript eval. So you can actually run arbitrary iTwin.js JavaScript code. All you have to do is just use the word element, basically. So the element already exists. So you would literally just type this. So you just JavaScript eval in the iTwin.js context. You can also access the iModel if you want to use like specific like JavaScript methods that exist only on the iModel classes in iTwin. This is obviously for advanced users, and also if you're like talking to support and trying to support like specific workflow. So you can do something like element.code.value, or more interestingly, you can grab the category. So I already support, and I will be adding nodes for very common things. Like you can already get the category of an element, but in this case, you could also, like, if I don't support something yet, like the code.val or something, you can grab the category of the element, and then you can like grab its user label. So iModel.elements.getElement. Sorry, whoops. Definitely need to improve that text box. But yeah, so you grab the element category and then you grab its user label, which is really the same thing as if you just call it the category node and then pass it to the user label node. But the point is that, if I haven't yet added a certain node, then I can still give you a code snippet, for example, to help you do something more specific, to be like, hey, I have this particular model or category here that I want to be like filtered out. And then the other option, of course, is there will be some ways of automating that or like doing the exact same thing by right clicking either in here or here. You'll be able to like select something and right click on it and add it automatically to like the filter list. One thing that's not implemented yet, because I was mostly just showing material mapping, but is super easy, is I'm just going to add a new output here, which is just include or not. So that way you can like, we have this geometry complexity visualization that I talked about. You can zoom over to this guy. Maybe there'll be a button that automatically puts it in a table. Maybe you'll be able to access this table and edit it. But if I just find this guy, I'm like, wow, okay. Well, obviously no one's going to see this thing if I am running an animation from the outside, and this is like inside the walls, so why do I want this? There's probably a category that I could use to grab this. I could probably also just match on the word pipe and get rid of it already. But you'll just like grab this thing and just in the Graphel script, sorry, Graphel, by the way, I'm not even sure I've mentioned, is the name of this visual scripting language. But you'll just be like, if it's a pipe, then don't like process this instance. So like there'll be like an include input to this return node here that you can use to just throw out these things and save all that geometry and ignore these geometrically dense objects. So that's sort of the whole picture of what the future TwinSync Studio looks like in terms of handling really large scenes and automating things like material mapping, being able to filter things like that and tweak the scene as it imports. And that way you still have that rich Unreal Engine asset information at the end, but you still have access to the full iTwin metadata as you produce it. So just trying to build that tool set for people to build their scenes as they want them and use Unreal tools as they can, as they want to, and as they've trained for. So yeah, I think that covers basically everything that I want to talk about. So, let me know. Feel free to leave comments in the YouTube video and any other questions that you have. I am working really hard right now and have a goal of in June releasing, because the demo is actually going to end in the beginning of June. So I'm going to be working really hard this month to bring out a professional version for people that want to keep using this and people that have been adopting into their workflows. So thank you very much. And yeah, I look forward to talking to more people.